Hiya, my name's Phil Ritchie. I'm a zoology graduate from the University of Nottingham, and I'm now a practicing chartered biologist and an outdoor learning practitioner. And I've been asked by the team at Nottingham to talk to you today about my career and how I moved from being a young graduate to where I am today and what I do today, and also to share with you some of my learning along that journey with a particular emphasis on sustainability and how we apply sustainability through our work now. So I'm quite a visual learner. I tend to talk a lot of talks and provide information to people, and do use a lot of visual images to do that. I find that works for me, and hopefully it works for you too. So here's my moments in time, starting from a young lad as a paper boy, and I worked on a farm next door for a few years. I was a steam engine driver for a bit before I went off to Nottingham, where I became a zoology student. I chose zoology because at the time I thought plants were boring. I've learned a lot over the years, and I've discovered that's not the case. But zoology was the subject I chose. And on that journey through Nottingham, I learnt a lot about zoology, but I also discovered that I didn't want to work in a laboratory. And when I graduated, I became a police officer in London, and I had a 13-year career before I moved on, and a lot of that was focused on community work, which I'll talk a bit more about later. And from leaving the police service, I became a countryside ranger. I worked for the City of London Corporation, working on their green spaces, open spaces and parks, before taking an early retirement package as part of a restructure. And then I joined Surrey Wildlife Trust as a community officer, an adult education officer, before becoming self-employed and running a community interest company now as an outdoor learning practitioner, which I'll go into more detail. My life's been one circle, if you like, of continuous learning. So the question always remains, where next? And we'll talk about that a bit later. I'm a family man. I'm married to Claire. I have two sons, Callum and Monroe, and we have a dog. Really, really interested in art, as you'll see. And from a wildlife perspective, interested in bees, particularly wild bees, solitary bees, bumblebees, and trees. So preparing for this talk was a chance really to reflect back on my life and my career. It's quite a useful thing to do, and I suggest that various stages through your journey you do this because it is a useful process. And I had to think about what were the things that really ticked the boxes for me, what's taken me on my journey. And I think I have to start with this: is that a love of nature and art. I was always interested in nature. The chap you see there is my dad, with my brother on his back on Dunstable Downs. We regularly used to go up onto the downs and listen to skylarks. My dad's parents were gardeners. My grandfather was a market gardener. My grandmother just loved nature, and she used to take me out onto the Dorset Heaths to look at tiger beetles, at smooth snake. And that really started off when my dad picked up from that. And he used to take me to the building that you see on the right, which is the Natural History Museum at Tring. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Natural History Museum in London. They're not always aware that there's another branch of that museum out in Tring, which is near where we lived. And my dad used to take us there regularly. And whilst my brothers used to run around looking at stuffed animals, I spent ages looking at insects in the boxes. And that's really where my passion for insects came from. So these early experiences are really important to you in your career. And even if you don't go on to study the subjects, hold on to them because you never know when they're going to be a benefit to you. And as part of that process, my father also gave us pencils and crayons, and I discovered that I could actually draw. And my passion in art is always has been nature. I care about people, so that's another key aspect of me and my career, as you'll see as we go on. I say I'm a family man. This is me with my two sons when they were younger. The small picture at the top is my brother with one of our foster sisters. And I had three brothers, but my mother wasn't contented with three sons, so she used to foster. So from a very early age, I had an involvement in caring for people. As a police officer, the picture at the bottom you'll see me with my colleague Ralph. We were the first police officers in North London to set up a youth club, and that's carried on through with me through my career. And I now work with adults with varying needs, learning needs, and mental and physical needs. Encourage them to get outdoors and to learn. Another key feature of my life has been sharing my learning, and my learning started very early on with my grandparents. As I said, my father's parents taught me about plants and wildlife. This is my mother's father, who I love dearly, and he taught me different things. He taught me about compassion and love for people. And this is a man who lost both legs and an eye in the First World War, but was never bitter. And I think that stuck with me from an early age. Another key influence on me, apart from my family, was my teacher. So this is me in my first year at grammar school, year 1 and 2, and the man in the middle is my teacher, Mr. Davis. Small Welshman, very loud voice, a lovely man. And when I look back, I don't think I realised at the time how much an influence he had on me. But he was my English teacher as well, and I went to him once and told him that I didn't like English. I had trouble reading and writing, and he just smiled at me and handed me a copy of Lord of the Flies. And that's where my storytelling started, really. And I love this quote from Justin Trudeau because I think this about sums up Mr. Davis and his style in teaching. So I have become a motivational storyteller. I was fascinated by Aesop's fables and other stories, and I use it in every aspect of my work. Sometimes I dress up to tell stories, but not always. So, what is my story? How did I go on this journey from student to teacher? Well, I started at Nottingham, as I've already said, a fantastic university. I loved my time there. Studying a science degree, I picked up skills in gathering information and data and analysing it and reporting it. And it taught me to have a critical mind, and that applies to all aspects of life. But interestingly, I also realised that I didn't like working in labs. And a lot of my degree was in labs, and I preferred being outdoors, studying field trips. But there are other aspects to student life as well, and they're just as important. They're important for you as an individual, but they're important when you come to apply for jobs in your career. And I developed a lifelong love of judo at University of Nottingham and hill walking. I mean, Nottingham's a great place. We could access the Peak District and various areas, open areas where we could go and walk. And about every other weekend, at least once a month, I'd go hill walking. And that stayed with me throughout my life. As a police officer in North London, I learned a lot, actually. I learned a lot about people. That's really where I could hone my community interest and learn about people. I developed an ability to work in and lead teams. I became a team leader. And I also discovered my interest and my ability in training people. So this is where I first started teaching people, and I was part of a street duties team, and we taught young police officers coming out and how to behave and function in public and on the street. I mean, I considered it a very important role, and I was good at it, and that stayed with me on my journey. I moved to the City of London Corporation. After 13 years in the police service, I became a countryside ranger, covering parks, gardens, and open spaces in South London and Surrey. And originally, I was recruited because of my policing skills, but I very quickly moved into a broader rangering skills. I was able to apply my biological, zoological knowledge to conservation work, and my scientific learning about reporting and collecting evidence was useful for writing management plans. I was lucky. Opportunities came up. I'm quite good at jumping at opportunities when they appeared, and I moved from ranger to senior ranger, and then was promoted to head ranger of a national nature reserve. And again, this learning aspect, this desire and interest in training people, came to the fore, and I worked with colleagues in the City of London and the National Trust, and we worked on a careership scheme, which is a modern apprenticeship scheme, where we were training young people at level 2 and level 3 MVQs, and getting certificates in environmental conservation. So they all went on to become rangers themselves. So a very successful scheme. So once you've graduated and you moved on, don't shut your eyes to opportunities. Consider vocational training. Most people go down an academic route, but it isn't always suited to everyone. And if you come out of your degree and you felt you haven't done so well, consider the fact that maybe you need to learn a different way. And vocational training is often available through employers. So have a think about that as you move on. I left the City of London. I took an early retirement package, which was actually allowed me to draw a pension slightly earlier, which allowed me to then move into the Wildlife Trust at a time when I was still supporting children at home, and but it allowed me to take a job that paid less, but in some ways was more gratifying. So that was quite a useful step for me. And they wanted someone with strong countryside skills, ranger skills to lead volunteers and to engage with local communities. And they wanted the biological experience, which I had. And you can see me here on the top picture, training volunteers on a site with their rangers, teaching them how to pollard and coppice trees. So that experience that I gained as a police officer and a ranger, I could now apply to a broader community across Surrey and train new recruits to the trust, train their volunteer groups, and work with young people in community projects. All the time outdoor learning, all the time working in countryside and conservation, so benefiting wildlife. So going back to my original interest and love of nature and back to my original degree, supporting wildlife. And then after a while, I took the confidence to become self-employed and to leave the trust and set up my own company. And that focused on those core things. And I did a review at that point as well, similar to what I've done for this talk. And it was looking back and saying, well, what are the key things I'm focused on? I'm a lifelong learner. I've always learned. I learn as much as I teach. And I would share that with you, is that don't close your mind to learning. Keep your mind open to learning. And I share that learning with other people. I lead community learning projects. So that was a key aspect of my past, and I apply that in my role as an individual. I focus on adult learning, so adults, including young people, 18 upwards. And I achieved that through a training course. I did a teacher training course at a local college for teaching adults. Training people with practical skills, volunteers. I promote gardening quite a lot now, so gardening with wildlife, and that holds true to my biological background. But we also do permaculture practice, so looking at gardening in a more holistic way, in an organic way. And I've also recently trained to practice therapeutic horticulture, so using gardening and plants and being outdoors and working with animals to help heal people physically and mentally. I mentor University of Nottingham students, hence why I'm here today talking to you. I work with other students as well to share what I've learnt and little tricks and how I've achieved things and knowledge, and help them with creating CVs and applying for jobs. So is that approach sustainable? Well, it was originally when we first started and I was self-employed. It was going really well, and we were getting in business. We were never about making a lot of money. It was about providing these activities and putting food on the table, and that worked until COVID, the dreaded C word, and lockdown, and the business collapsed overnight. But my eldest son came home from university. He was studying art and design, and he said, "Oh, set up a community interest company, Dad, and I'll show you how to do it." And we did. And that really was the next step. That was an opportunity that I wouldn't have gone looking for, but actually has turned out to be probably one of the most useful steps we've made recently. And we're now able in a position to help local communities to fund projects. So we are a community interest company. They were set up to help with social enterprises, people like ourselves who wanted to help communities were not for profit. We weren't trying to make large amounts of money, but we wanted to help communities and people and individuals change their lives, and to engage with wildlife, connect with wildlife, and help benefit wildlife and improve biodiversity. And becoming a CIC has made us sustainable because we're able to apply for grants. We're able to have donations because we have so many charitable status, and that really has been the bedrock of our success over the last couple of years. And we've been successful. My wife Claire was a fundraising officer for a local authority. She's part of the team. We have another director who's from a business background, and another one who works from a community background. She's a business manager at a community college. And we've been successful in getting grants. We've had money from the Lottery, Community Fund, the Community Foundation of Surrey. Waitrose has given us money. And more importantly, recently, we've had money from health and care partnerships, Surrey Downs and Surrey Heartlands, to do community-based projects that look at green social prescribing. So using nature, plants, wildlife to help heal people physically, mentally, and emotionally. And our approach is such that we are able to sustain those projects. So a simple example, we did a community project, garden project. We had a grant from Surrey Downs, but we were able to attract donations in materials from local businesses to the equivalence of £10,000 and volunteer time equivalent to £5,000. So we were able to match fund the grant that we got, which doubled our income for that project. So we were able to deliver a community garden project worth £30,000. So a lot more flexible approach to things and sustainable. And in that, we were able to employ local people, young people, give them opportunity for part-time work and learn skills, and local single sole trader businesses and support those as well. So you can see here now starting the beginnings of a sustainable approach to what we do. A key aspect of what we do from sustainability is we apply the 5 R's, albeit now that you'll see the 7 there. So the whole idea of permaculture and recycling, 5 R's. So the 2 new ones are at the top. So thinking about when you're doing stuff, this can be applied to your life, it can apply to your work, but it's about rethink what you do. Can we shop differently? Can we shop locally? Can we shop through a local store? Can we use a local reuse shop? Can we refuse to buy stuff? Do we really need this? Is it necessary? Do we just want it or do we need it? Reduce what you purchase new. Try and buy second hand. Try and repair things. Try and reuse stuff you already have. We repurpose a lot of materials. You can see a gateway here to a community project. All that material is reused from other places. The timbers were donated by a local business. The pallets were rescued from a local shop, didn't want them. Bits of timber donated, materials. So yeah, it's a great approach. And then if you have to get rid of the stuff, recycle it properly, dispose of it responsibly, take it to your local recycling centre. The other aspect of sustainability as well is partnership working and working with other people. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I graduated in 1980, so I've been at this a long time, but I don't know everything. And I know I don't know everything. And so working with other people improves what I can do, broadens what I can do. So we work with a wide range of people, but 2 key people here is my friend Chris, who's a forest school leader. He works outdoors with, not so much with children now. He tends to train other forest school leaders. So he's working mainly with adults, teaching them woodcraft skills, tool sharpening, fire lighting. And then my eldest son, Callum, who's an illustrator who does a lot of music events and social events and does social media. He helped us with our social media development, and helps us with organising and running events. So horses for courses, really, pulling in people with different skills that can help broaden your both your experience. And I learn from people I work with as well. So it isn't just about utilising their skills. I'm actually learning at the same time, and hopefully they're learning from me too. So has it been successful? Well, it has. It was a really good business model. This is our business plan. We do have a written business plan, but I like to keep things simple and visual. So this is our flower of success. Um, so core to what we do is we're looking at improving people's lives, people and wildlife's lives. And how we do it is we entertain, we engage and educate. And our purpose for doing that is to lead change, to change people's lives, to change the environment for the better, to influence people's behaviour and to share ideas. And that success is reflected in the fact that we were recruited by the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew to train their national programme, Grow Wild programme. We work with the RHS on programmes, and we work with Surrey and Sussex Wildlife Trust. The highlight of last year of this process was that we got invited to the Royal Horticultural Society show at Hampton Court, where I met Carol Klein from BBC Gardeners World, who I love her style of gardening. It was a real pleasure to meet her, and it was great to share ideas. So, yeah, it is a sustainable model. So, moving on from economic sustainability, and the three core elements of sustainability really: economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. They're the three cores. How do we apply our processes to environmental sustainability? How can we improve the environment for all nature and people? Well, one way to achieve this is by facilitating direct contact with wildlife. As a zoologist, I'm used to working with animals, trapping animals, finding animals, and I've learned over the years that people need to see real things. It needs to be tangible, it needs to be in front of them. So on the left, working with Surrey Wildlife Trust doing newt identification. So we great crested newts and smooth newts. Working with young people and children from the local school. This is our garden. They come to our garden and we have various traps out so we can show them animals, but also plants. So looking at wildflowers and the benefits of wildflowers and sowing wildflowers, how they attract insects. And of course, then there's the food chain aspect of attracting birds like the great spotted woodpecker here, and newts in our own garden. So we have breeding population of smooth newts, which we can handle legally, and nothing better than to be able to show people newts that they perhaps would see at a distance, but close up. How can you not get excited in seeing a garden dragon such as this smooth newt? Amazing things. We also, I've learned, because of my interest in art, I've always done art, and it's always been nature-based art. We do a lot of work now using art and craft to inspire people to engage with nature who perhaps are interested in the art but not necessarily immediately interested in nature, and applying that and drawing them in. So you can see a group here doing batik printing, all inspired by plants and nature, and using dry clay to create nature-based plant-shaped prints and stuff. And this has been really successful um, in entertaining people and getting them interested, getting them round tables talking, get in a room where you can then start to share information about natural history. So a very useful tool we found. I do a lot of teaching about ecology and conservation, and I use my storytelling tales in that because I found it's a really good way of engaging people, drawing them in, getting them involved, telling a story, whether that's in a woodland or a garden or in the classroom. And then getting them there so that they're listening to you. Once you have people engaged with you and listening to you, you can start to share the messages. And I found that face-to-face, outdoors particularly, but also in the classroom, is the place to achieve it. Bits of paper, you can hand out all the bits of paper you like, and quite often they end up in the bin or they might get glanced at. So don't underestimate. If you're a storyteller and you like telling stories and you like writing stories, really important skills, really useful skills. Face-to-face training as well. A lot of people don't learn well from written and spoken word. Demonstration or kinesthetic learning is really important, and a lot of countryside skills need to be demonstrated. I work with staff, so there's a picture here of a senior ranger and a ranger that I trained for the City London Corporation and a couple of young people on Duke of Edinburgh. On the right is a chap who dropped out of school really young, part of a community project I was involved with, who told me he couldn't do anything. He was useless at everything. And by the end of it, I had him building areas in the community allotment for seating areas using old pallets. But I did it by demonstration. He was not going to engage by reading. So that style of learning, and it may be you've discovered that in your journey so far, and maybe you'll discover it on your journey, but be open to different styles of learning. It's really important. And demonstrating helps educate people. You can read something and absorb some of it, you can listen to something, but to be shown it and to do it, the learning embeds much better, and you'll go away with a better understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it. We share woodcraft skills. Chris and I are both into woodcraft, not bushcraft, woodcraft. So teaching skills, teaching people to use knives who perhaps would never have used knives, and that knives can be used safely. They are a tool. Lighting fires, using products from hazel coppicing to create structures for the garden. And we found this to be really, really useful. People enjoy it. So the people you see in this slide, most of those come from the social housing scheme next door to the allotment. Most of them had never been out on the allotment, and nearly all of them, apart from the chap lighting the fire, who we found had done this when he was younger, had been out into the woodland and done coppicing. So really good way of drawing people in. Sitting around a fire, sitting around doing community, people talk, people share. And that's a really important opportunity that is lost a lot in society. So we found it as a really useful tool for green social prescribing, helping people relax, helping people engage, find friends, socialize. So social change is the final one. So how do we use nature to improve the lives of people? How have we achieved that? Well, we take people out into the natural environment. We work with groups and individuals. We've worked 2 projects with healthcare projects. We're getting people out, building community gardens, getting them out gardening, intergenerational learning skills, young people learning how to plant and transplant plants from older people who've been gardening all their lives, people working together, getting people doing non-traditional roles for them, encouraging people to build hurdle hedges, that maybe getting people to use tools who perhaps never been shown how to use tools. Getting people out into wildflower meadows, showing them insects, showing them wildflowers, showing them benefit of wildflowers. All of these tools help engage people. I also use biological processes and wildlife to demonstrate other softer messages. So if there's any of you watching this who are biologists or zoologists, you may be familiar with this life cycle for insects. So basically 2 types: incomplete metamorphosis and complete metamorphosis. Grasshoppers, dragonflies, what you could classify as the lower order of insects, they go through incomplete metamorphosis. The egg hatches, a little nymph comes out, then it molts and creates a bigger nymph, and then a larger nymph, and then ultimately the last nymph stage comes to the adult. So little steps, each one looking similar but larger until you get the adult. Whereas the butterfly goes through complete metamorphosis. The egg hatches and a caterpillar comes out, munches leaves, hangs upside down, turns into a chrysalis. Out of the chrysalis comes the adult. So the end result is the same, egg to adult. How does that apply to people? How can I use that for people? Well, I can open a conversation. Do you make changes in your life by taking small steps? Do you feel more comfortable doing a little bit of change at a time? Or do you like making big changes? Do you like leaping from one thing to another? Do you like making large changes? And you can have those conversations. Neither approach is right or wrong. They're different. They can end up in the same place. And you might do them, either of them, at different times in your life. And I certainly have done. So maybe have a think about this for yourself. Well, when you're applying for jobs and you think about jobs, what am I most comfortable with? What do I prefer? And you may want to push yourself into the other zone sometimes, but be honest about this, because if you're a person who likes making small progressive steps, do you want to take on a job or a role that requires you to do big ones if you don't feel comfortable with that, or vice versa? So have a think about that. And we use storytelling to influence people through nature. So one of the reasons we were at a Hampton Court show, the RHS show, where I met Carol Klein, I showed you earlier, is because they wanted us to talk about storytelling. They wanted us to wander around the show talking to people and telling stories to motivate people, but we were talking to volunteers and volunteer groups about how they can use storytelling to engage people and get people involved. So, and I was asked some basic rules, and these are 4 simple rules that I would say to anyone, and these apply to life as well as storytelling, but I mean they do apply to that role, but they're fundamental really, and starting point really. It's a HAIL concept. Honesty. Be clear and straight with people. Be honest with you. I learned this in the police service very early on. You shouldn't lie to people, but don't try and bluff people either. If you don't know something, say you don't know it. Be honest, because you'll get caught out, and people won't trust you. And ultimately, the reason I'm doing this and you're telling stories is to engage people, is to build trust with people so that they will listen to you, so you can help them, so you can change them. So be honest. Be authentic. Be yourself. I am what I am. A bit rough around the edges sometimes, but when I talk to people, it comes across, and people will more like to trust you because you're being authentic. Don't try and be something you're not. It doesn't work. Just be yourself. Integrity. Be true to your word. If you offer to do something for someone, do it. And if you can't do it, tell them you're struggling to do it, but be true to your word. As a business, we have been successful because clients have always said to us, "Oh, you said you'll get back to us, and you did." Well, yes, we do, because we follow an integrity approach to our business. But there are so many people who don't. So just be true to your word. And this last one seems a bit odd when you're talking about businesses, but love. We could do with more love in the world, to be honest with you, particularly in this country at the moment. We could do with a bit more love. Random acts of kindness. My dad, going back to my dad, was one of my early teachers. My dad once, we were driving to town. We used to go to town every Saturday to buy fish and go to the library. And he stopped once in the rain and picked up an old couple, and we all had to sit in the back of the car, and he took them in. And I asked him later, "Do you know them then?" "No." "Why did you pick them up then?" "Well, it was raining. We were going to town." Small acts of random kindness. They've stayed with me. They help make the world go round, both in the workplace and in your private life. I also use nature as props as well, because they're useful when you're trying to talk about biodiversity and the environment, but they're also useful for engaging people. And 2 key ones I use. I have a box of skulls. People often say it's Paul's box of skulls, and it causes a shock sometimes. But skulls are really good for talking and sharing. You can talk about the shape, you can talk about the animal underneath, you can talk about muscles and fur, you can talk about teeth, you can talk about diets. I talk about herbivores and omnivores and carnivores, and you can apply that to humans, and you can apply then the relationships to humans to animals, and how early human developed a relationship with dogs, and you can talk about. So they're really useful props, and I use a lot of dead things because you can move them around, and there's no cruelty involved in me. I don't like generally moving live animals around, apart from a pet or something, but not wild animals. So if the wild animal is in front of me, dead insects, skulls and bits and pieces are useful props to move around and take places. I really like talking and using trees. So here you see a picture of a yew tree that's possibly 1,000 years old. It's older than the church next to it. It's been there longer than the church next to it. And a 1,000-year-old tree will have seen at least 15 generations of the same family walk past it. So when you think about that, 15 generations of people past that tree from when it was a seed, and they're great tools for talking to people about and sharing. And I find personally they're quite grounding. They're quite a grounding thing. I started off thinking plants are boring, and I've come to love trees immensely because they, 1,000-year-old tree, and it puts our lives into context and helps ground you. So, and then sharing that learning. So I say all the time, keep your mind open to sharing. Lifelong learning has been core to my whole experience. I constantly sharing my learning with others, and here you can see me at RHS Wisley with a young staff member sharing my knowledge of ancient trees and orchards and meadows with her. But equally, I'm learning from her. She was telling me stuff that I didn't know, and so it's a two-way process. And if you can keep your mind open to lifelong learning and you can keep open to absorbing new facts, you will succeed in what you want to do. And I think at that point, it's probably appropriate for me to close the talk. I hope it's been helpful. I hope you've learned something from it. I will provide the team at Nottingham with a copy of this presentation as a PDF so you can access it. And I can finish at that point by just wishing you all the best with your journey. It's been an absolute blast for me from leaving University of Nottingham. I had a great time there, and I've had a great life that's come on for it. So I wish you all the best in yours, and just keep learning, guys.